have a question that's going to ask you to put on your Wayne Gretzky crystal ball hat. Will trade and investment with China resume 3 years ago, or is that forever damaged?
Well, it's funny you say that. I have no concern about that's less of our problem and a hell of a lot more of China's problem, because
just before you carry on, Ted, tell the folks how involved you are in China and how often you go there, and you actually speak one of the dialects, so that's what Ted also brings to this, and I think you represent a company in Toronto. I'm not giving all your, you make so much money, I just have to ask you how many yachts you now have to water ski.
My yacht, as you know, my yacht's a canoe. So
up at the lake, Anyway, tell them a bit about your involvement in China and how China is one area, and Japan that Ted is an expert.
No, well, I guess I've been involved in those two markets for most of my working life. And my first visits to Asia, when it was so long ago that it still looked like Asia, before you had any high rises, you had one high rise building in Hong Kong the first time I went there. And when I went to China the first time, it was probably 1972, and I was sent over there to buy peanuts for Canada Packers to make peanut butter. And I had to go to the Canton Fair because you weren't allowed to go into mainland China. And at that point, they had the fair in Hong Kong, and that's where the Guailos, the people that were from foreigners, went to buy things. And so I've been at it since then, and I've had a long history of it with Maple Leaf Foods. But the thing I think is pretty clear, David, is that China is coming to the conclusion. Certainly, most of the well-educated leaders in China are knowledgeable about the fact that they cannot feed themselves. I think I think that's the one thing that probably we aren't fully aware of or understand, but they're getting the picture pretty clearly, and they know that their own projections are very aggressive and probably unlikely to be met, even unless everything went perfect, and things aren't going perfect. So I think that we'll find there's more opportunity to work with China in the future if we can get through this nasty period that we're in now, where geopolitical strategies are beginning to push aside some things that are absolutely necessary. One of those things is you have to be able to eat, and so I think we will see saner heads prevail eventually here on this. But in the meantime, we're not lacking in places to go with our product. As I said, you don't see any, we see lower stocks in Canada and lower stock use ratios globally than we've seen in what, since 2000, and I don't know, probably the early 2000s, when we had the Great Grain Robbery, sorry, the 1970s, not 2000. My brain's gone. 1973, since we had the Great Grain Robbery, and so we got a lot of digging out to do. So I think the ball's in China's court a bit, because we're not lacking in places to go with the product. Sure, we'd like to supply China because they can pay more for it than others can, and we've got no reason not to. But it's kind of their choice. They're going to have to figure out how they're going to feed themselves.